Hi everyone, today I'm getting ready to put my flooring down and I got a lot to discuss with you. I saw a lot of people actually, they just glued their flooring to the floor using liquid nails. Now I love liquid nails, it's an awesome product, but I tell you what, I don't trust liquid nails in a 100-mile-per-hour crash. And you say 100 miles per hour. Well, if you're doing 50 and a car strays into your lane that's doing 50, you're going to have a 100-mile-an-hour crash. That's just the math. And if you have only glued your floor down, that's all you did is just glued it down with liquid nails, and then you built your framing on top of that. Your framing to your walls, to your cabinets, and everything is screwed into your floor, which is only glued down. Where is all that weight gonna go? What's gonna happen in a crash? You know, head-on collision, and it's all gonna fly forward, isn't it? So you take a look at my van and you can see the floor's seen better days, right? I mean, this thing is all scratched, it's all rusty, from just, it's been a work van. This was a work van. You can see the walls are full of nicks and scratches, and look in the floor here, you can see these holes going through all over the place, hole, and it got rusted down, tie down. I'd probably break that trying to get it out if I tried to pull it out. And people I saw doing their floors, they, you know, it's a good idea just to use these 1x2 bats, and that helps you reduce your height. You don't want to put too much height on your floor, because then that cuts off on your head clearance, of course. And I saw people, they were like, well, we can cut it down even more if we put it down in these grooves in between the ridges, you know, because then it's not raised. Well, here's the problem with that. Let me show you right here. You see this seam? This seam is raised, right? So they use glue. If you glue this down here, you created a hump between here and here. And when you go to put your final finished flooring on, whether you're going to do wood or tile or whatever you're going to put on there, you're going to end up with waves in your floor, and they'll be very visible. Now, if you look at these ridges, they're the one thing that goes straight through. Look, I put my bat up on top of there. It sits flush all the way across that, clear to the very other end of the van. So these ridges are all flush. Grooves, no. Ridges, yes. So you want your bats where you want them, on your ridges. Now, I'm going to cut my bats out, and I'm going to run them widthways with the van. I'm not going to run them lengthwise, and there's a reason why. Let me show you. Now, allow me to introduce you to a tape measure. This is just a little cheap home tape measure, but all tape measures will have this. This is a tape measure. It's marked in inches, right? Now, have you ever noticed on your tape measure, for some reason, some of these numbers show up in red? Notice that? Look at that. Right there in red. Let me turn it right side up for you. In red. Number 16. Now we go on up the line. Number 32, right? Go on up the line. to number 48. Why do they put those? Why do they put those numbers in red? Well, here's why. If you've ever been a framer, I framed houses as a living for about 5 years before I got into security work. Standard building practices in the United States is when you lay your floor joists, you lay them 16 inches apart. That's standard building practice. Now there's a very good reason why that. If you ever notice that when you go to buy plywood, plywood comes in 4x8 sheets. Well, they do that on purpose, because if you did your joists by standard American building standards, then your plywood is always going to break right on the next floor joist. So, I saw these poor unguided souls just willy-nilly throwing out their bats on the floor, all willy-nilly wherever it looked like it fit. And then they took time to, before they glued them down, we got to mark each one so that when we come back to glue them down, we'll make sure we're getting the right ones in the right spot. Look, you're obviously not gonna, every piece isn't gonna fit just right. So here's what you want to do. You want to measure out the spot where you're putting your first bat. Get the exact measurement, go cut it, screw it down. Get your next bat. If you see you're gonna have several in a row that are going to be the same size, then you can cut several of them the same size and just throw them all in there. And your individual ones that have to be cut shorter or longer or finesse to curve something, then those. But you screw your bats down as you go along. You don't get them all cut and laid out just perfect, number them, pull them all off. These poor people, they were gluing their bats down, and then they had to find weight. They had to find heavy weight because, I don't know if you know, but when they lumber a material, it always comes with a little bow. That's just a natural fact of wood. When you buy wood, it has a little bow in it. These poor people, they would glue their bat down, and then they would have to lay heavy weights on it to hold it down flush to the floor while the glue dried, and go in the house and do something else for the next day. No, I'm sorry. That's ridiculous. No! I mentioned all these holes that are all throughout the van. This van had holes just about everywhere it had, because they had shelving in here for the work van, and it's all scarred up. And these poor unguided souls, they washed the thing down with special power wash materials, and I mean, they just scrubbed it and scrubbed, and one guy sanded all the rust off and repainted the whole floor. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you put yourself through that much? Look, people. You're just gonna cover this over. It's all gonna be covered over. The walls, I don't have to paint the walls. They're gonna be covered over. I'm gonna build walls in front of those and insulate it. I'm putting insulation down on my floor. In this van, I plan on having a bulkhead. My last van, I didn't insulate, and so I just screwed my plywood directly to the floor. But this van, I'm going to insulate, because I'm going to put a bulkhead door there. It's going to be a door that leads into the cab area, and that way I can pass back and forth. But it's going to be all encapsulated in here. It's going to hold heat or air conditioning good. And so, yes, I'm going to use insulation, but on the walls, they're going to be covered. None of this, you won't see any of it. Why put yourself through all that work? Why put yourself through all of that work, it's totally unnecessary. And they filled every hole. They had caulking compound or some kind of compound they were just going through, and they were filling every single little hole. I'm like, are we planning on white rafting? Are we gonna go river rafting in this van? What, why does it have to be airtight? I mean, there's no need. There's absolutely no need to caulk and fill every single hole. It's going to be covered with a floor. It's going to be covered with insulation. It's going to be fine. You don't have to do all of that work. Put yourself through all of that. So basically, here's the process. And it's real simple. Measure out every 16 inches from, I'm going to measure from where exactly my bulk door will be. The floor that I'm going to put on will extend past that and nudge right up to that white area right through here. But starting where my bulk wall is going to be with the door, back will be every 16 inches. Every 16 inches you put a bat running long ways. And then over here along your doorway, of course, you're going to run a straight one along that lip and meet all of your bats up to that one. That way you're not looking at hollow spots under there. So screw those all down with sheet metal screws, self-drilling screws. Screw those down to make sure they're set in below the wood line as far as you can get them. And then in between your bats, run foam board. I'm going to run pink foam board as insulation. And then I'm just going to cut my pieces of plywood out to go on top and screw them down to the bats. Now, my floor will be all screwed down, and that will allow me, when I go to start building cabinets and walls and whatever else, I will know exactly where in the floor the next, what we call joist or stud in the floor will be, because it's every 16 inches. It's not all willy-wally. I don't have to try and guess where did I run my bats. They're all every 16 inches, just like standard American framing is. So let's get started. So I wanted to pause here for a second in my hyperlapse and show you what I got going on. Okay, so I know that my bulk wall is going to start right where this stud is about and go this way. And so I measured, tried to find a spot that it's hard to do because this is all nothing's real straight, but I was able to find a spot and measured distance between here is 11.5, and that's between the bare metal, but on top of that you've got 1/4 of an inch of this plastic here and 1/4 of an inch of this plastic. So take a 1/2 inch off, and I measured from this point to here 11 inches. Okay, so that told me exactly on both ends where my first floor joist is going to run. We're going to call these bats floor joists. And from that point on, I measured 16 inches and put an X. That's the side of the line that my next joist is going to run on. It's going to run right there. And then my next one on this line, going that way. This line going that way, on this line going that way. Now when I get up to here, 16 puts me into the wheel well, so obviously can't do that, and I'll have to put some pieces in, a frame in around the wheel well, and keep on going. Make sure that all of my cross bats all the way through are exactly 16 inches apart. And there it is, got all my bats down. Next stage in this is to cut out all my styrofoam board to fit in between it, and then throw my plywood on top and screw it down. It's that simple. And ta-da! Got all the foam board down. So I want to take a break for a moment and show you how everything's fitting. Fits right up around those corners and curves just nicely. Not too worried about a little bit of a gap. I'm gonna go over it with probably molding or caulking or something to give it a better finished look after I'm all done. Put the finished floor on. A little trick to getting around these corners is there's two tricks. This is called a scribing tool, and this is a real easy way to get the exact dimensions of a curve like this. And you just push it forward, and you see how it takes the form of that curve, and then you just lay it where your measurements are and scribe it out. The other method is to take a compass, and when you got your board as square across, you can set this to the widest gap and then just follow along with the compass and keep it straight and get that exact same curve. And I use both methods. I use the scribe tool down there, and I use the compass up here. And I was just trying to experiment a little bit, see which one I like best. I think they both did just as good. So. there it is, my subfloor, all finished. And we don't do anything else to the floor until the whole rest of the build is done. When it's all done, then you lay whatever linoleum tile or carpet you're gonna lay, and that's the last thing you do. And that's for obvious reasons. You don't want to mar it up while you're building the rest of the van. So yeah, you can look down at this thing, and there's no waves in it. Perfectly level floor. Praise you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus.